Most men understand willpower as a muscle that gets tired. They think discipline is about gritting teeth and knuckling through urges. But 2 years of semen retention reveals something deeper. It's not about resistance. It's about rewiring the fundamental architecture of how your brain allocates energy, attention. The timeline isn't linear. Your body doesn't simply get better month by month. Instead, it undergoes 3 distinct phases of biological and psychological reconstruction. Each phase strips away a layer of mental noise, hormonal chaos, and scattered focus. By year 2, you're not the same person who started this journey. You've literally changed the neural pathways that determine what you notice, what you pursue, and how others perceive your presence. Your endocrine system operates like a complex orchestra. Every hormone influences every other hormone. For years, regular ejaculation has been sending chaotic signals through this system. Testosterone spikes, then crashes. Prolactin floods your brain with fatigue and mental fog. Dopamine receptors become desensitized, requiring more stimulation for the same satisfaction. Your body lives in constant reactive mode, chasing peaks and recovering from valleys. The first 6 months of retention aren't about becoming superhuman. They're about returning to baseline human function. Your testosterone doesn't skyrocket, it stabilizes. This stability is what most men have never experienced. Without the constant depletion and recovery cycle, your cortisol levels begin to normalize. Better cortisol regulation means deeper sleep, more efficient metabolism, and clearer thinking during stress. Your thyroid function improves because it's no longer compensating for erratic energy demands. But here's what science reveals about this phase. Your brain is also recalibrating its reward pathways. The constant dopamine hits from sexual novelty have trained your neural circuits to expect instant gratification. During these first months, your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for long-term planning and impulse control, begins to reassert dominance over the limbic system. You're not just building willpower. You're literally rewiring the hierarchy of brain function. The primitive drives that once commanded your attention start taking orders from higher-order thinking. This is where retention transforms from discipline into identity. Your brain's default mode network, the neural activity that runs when you're not focused on anything specific, begins to quiet. Most men live with constant mental chatter, fantasies, worries, random thoughts cycling endlessly. This background noise consumes enormous cognitive resources. 7 months in, that noise starts to fade. Neuroscience shows us that sexual thoughts activate the same reward circuits as addictive substances. Every fantasy, every urge indulged, strengthens neural pathways that pull attention away from present, moment awareness. When you stop feeding these circuits, they begin to weaken. Your brain starts allocating that freed-up processing power to other functions: memory consolidation, pattern recognition, social awareness. You become more present not through meditation or mindfulness techniques, but through the simple act of no longer scattering your mental energy. The hippocampus, your brain's memory center, undergoes significant changes during this phase. Without the constant dopamine fluctuations from sexual stimulation, your long-term memory encoding becomes more efficient. Information sticks better. You remember conversations, details, patterns that would have slipped through the cracks before. This isn't about having a photographic memory. It's about your brain finally having the resources to properly file and retrieve information instead of burning them on sexual fantasies. Your working memory capacity expands dramatically. Working memory is like your brain's RAM. How much information you can hold and manipulate simultaneously. Most men operate with severely limited working memory because part of their mental bandwidth is always reserved for sexual thoughts and urges. 8 months into retention, that bandwidth becomes available for actual thinking. Complex problems become manageable. You can hold multiple variables in mind while making decisions. The social changes during this phase aren't mystical. They're neurological. Your brain develops stronger connections between the prefrontal cortex and the temporal parietal junction, areas responsible for reading social cues and understanding others' intentions. You pick up on subtleties you've been missing for years. People respond differently to you because you're actually seeing them more clearly. The confidence isn't forced or performed. It emerges naturally from a brain that's no longer consumed by internal sexual noise, mirror neurons. The cells that fire when you observe others' actions and emotions become hyperactive in this phase. Your ability to read rooms, understand unspoken communication, and anticipate others' needs sharpens to an almost uncomfortable degree. You start finishing people's sentences not because you're being rude, but because your brain is finally operating at full capacity. The empathy isn't emotional, it's computational. Your mind processes social data with the efficiency it was designed for. By month 15, the identity shift completes. You stop thinking of yourself as someone doing retention and start operating as someone who has transcended the need for constant sexual release. This isn't willpower anymore. It's neurological rewiring. The urges don't disappear, they become irrelevant. Like a master chef who no longer craves fast food, your brain has developed more sophisticated reward systems. You've literally outgrown your former self. Few men reach this phase because most don't understand what they're building toward. They think retention is about accumulating some mystical energy or becoming more attractive. But 2 years reveals the true transformation. You shift from reactive living to proactive life architecture. Your brain begins filtering every decision through long-term consequence rather than short-term pleasure. The anterior cingulate cortex, your brain's CEO, becomes hyperactive in this phase. This region is responsible for conflict monitoring, decision-making, and empathy. Most men operate with a weakened ACC because constant sexual stimulation creates neural static that interferes with clear thinking. 2 years of retention allows this area to develop unprecedented strength. You start seeing patterns others miss. You anticipate problems before they emerge. You make decisions that serve your future self rather than your current impulses. This is when people start describing you as magnetic or powerful, but they can't explain why. The answer lies in evolutionary psychology. For millions of years, humans have been unconsciously assessing others' self-control and long-term thinking ability. These traits signal genetic fitness and leadership potential. Your brain, no longer hijacked by sexual compulsion, begins broadcasting these signals naturally. You're not trying to be attractive or dominant. You're simply operating from a neurological state that others instinctively recognize as rare and valuable. The retention journey completes its transformation. You haven't just changed your habits. You've rewired the fundamental patterns that determine how you show up in the world.